at the Improv. It was 2002. He came in, they were like, hey, this guy's got to go on. I was like, what? And they're like, this guy, he's got to go on right now. And he bumped me, and he crushed it. It was insane. It made me go back to zero as a comedian. It made me go back to zero. Because I was like, I don't know anything about stand-up after I saw this guy. And he only did 1 minute.
Rob really stands out as the best.
He was the best.
There hasn't been a unique voice in comedy in some time now. And I think Rob is just the guy.
The guy's got something in his soul that's different from everybody else.
He's the single most prolific act that's ever lived.
You never saw anything like it.
It's 1 minute.
Most amazing comic for a minute I've ever seen.
How many laughs per minute could you possibly get?
Actually, I'm also known as 1 minute, but that's just with women I've slept with.
That's the funniest minute I've ever seen.
How do I describe Rob?
Inspiring, 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 inspiring. Is that 5?
I'd go so far as to call him irreverent, but sometimes he's being reverent and he backdoors you with the irreverent.
And people love it.
He's a human IED, you know, so he's an explosive.
It's the most powerful 60 seconds you'll ever see.
He's a girl-stealing son of a bitch.
Good guy, though.
Yeah.
He's the spawn of some 80s hack who fucked that chick with the accordion, and now you got this.
Dangerous.
Awe-inspiring.
Exciting.
Fearless.
Funny.
So funny.
Funny. That's the bottom line. He's just fucking funny, man.
Have you ever heard a story that was so inconceivable, so bizarre, so preposterous, that it must have had at least some truth to it? Such is the saga of Rob Sampson, the 1 minute comic. A man who immediately rose to headliner status with his gimmick of doing shows that were only 1 minute long. His act was so groundbreaking and revolutionary, he became a living legend amongst the comedy community. Impossible, right? Not so fast. In this journey, two comedians, Rick D'Elia and Morgan Preston, investigate the claims from the skeptics and weigh them against the detailed accounts and stories from many of their friends, colleagues, and people highly respected in the entertainment industry. As the legend of Sampson was believed to have originated in Seattle, the city where Morgan resides, they figured that'd be the perfect place to start. So they began their quest to find the truth. Morgan holding fast that the 1 minute comic never existed and was nothing more than a fairy tale.
And I noticed when I mentioned teabagging, most of the only guys were smiling. These girls don't know what it is. It usually happens when they're sleeping.
And Rick, truly believing all the stories he'd heard, so much so that Rob Sampson became the #1 comic he'd wanted to work with on his bucket list. Morgan claimed that Rick was gullible, naive, and a complete idiot. This assessment, though not entirely unfounded, only fueled Rick's mission to prove that he was right, and Rob Sampson was, in fact, real.
You're not rolling, right? Tell me when it's rolling.
It's rolling.
Oh, fuck, really, dude?
When I first moved to Los Angeles, the phone company spelled out the word apostrophe right in the middle of my last name. D-A-P-O-S-T-R-O-P-H-E-L-I-A. Depostrophilia.
The whole thing is too preposterous and over the top for me to believe any of it.
The story comes from someplace. It happened. There was a Rob Sampson out there who did 1 minute.
Where is this gentleman? The 1 minute comedian.
A Google search shows Rob Sampson as the professor of social sciences at Harvard University. We got a politician in the Canadian province of Ontario. Maybe he worked at a Yuck Yuck sometime. This Rob Sampson is 6'8" and is a guard for Atlanta.
Maybe that's the dude.
A 1 minute point guard.
I think we should at least research it and see what the hell the deal is.
We used to call him the Dreamweaver because he weaves dreams.
All the comics know about Rob, but yet to the average Joe, they don't know who he is.
Never heard of him. Nah, never heard of him.
No idea.
1 minute long.
Yeah.
No, I've never heard anybody like that.
The 1 minute comic, Rob Sampson, the comedian that was so amazing he headlines, but he only does a minute.
Sounds like most men I know.
I got a radio station lined up for it.
Who is it?
Dave Mancarelli.
Okay.
I want to welcome Rick D'Elia and Morgan Preston. They're appearing at Catch a Rising Star this week. Showtimes are 7:30. Guys, we're going to get to what you do on stage in just a minute. First, I got to ask you about this documentary that I heard you guys talking about in the hallway, and it can't possibly be right what I heard.
Allegedly, there was a comedian by the name of Rob Sampson.
Okay.
Who only had, his gimmick was doing 1 minute of material. And it was so good that he rose to headliner status, like, immediately.
If you think of every other stand-up comic as a strong cup of coffee, Bobby Sampson is the pure, uncut cocaine of stand-up comedy.
Morgan and I are going to try to find out if this guy existed or if he didn't.
I was down at the comedy store, somebody told me he's up for like the Mark Twain Award. I mean, I thought you had to be like barely dead or like a chick comic to win that fucking thing.
I've been around comedy a lot. I interview a lot of comedians, and I go to the club all the time. I can't imagine a guy that had such a killer 1 minute.
I didn't really understand. I thought people were kind of goofing on me when they said that he just does a minute.
It doesn't exist. It's just been blown up by a bunch of different comics, and because the stories don't always jive either.
One person says one thing, somebody says another thing. Glaring opposition.
It's gotta be people buying into the hype and just wanting to be part of it.
I'm pushing it forward because I feel like shit needs to be pushed forward, but is this something worth digging up? Is there anything there?
Dude, it's like the comedy equivalent of the JFK assassination, finding out.
So this is something you guys have heard from other comics. This isn't this is just a rumor, kind of a legend in the comedian world.
It comes from somewhere. I believe that somewhere there was a guy that did 1 minute of material. His name was Rob Sampson, and maybe the rumors snowballed from that.
In general, comedians talk about their lives on stage, and they just exaggerate for comedic effect, which leads me to believe that this story started from a base.
Dude, people are doing 1 minute now, so what I'm saying is, it's like that's what the whole internet is. It's all people got vines for 6 seconds.
Everybody wants their comedy fast, they want it right now, and they want their punchlines within a minute.
Have you talked to guys that have any recollection of this Rob Sampson guy? Have you talked to other comics? Do you know other comics personally that have encountered this or
not recollections? It's stories, and it's all stories that have to do with like some kind of a you don't think that it's. I mean, I know you think that there's.
I think it's
I'm
real.
not saying it's not.
I think
he
it's
doesn't
real.
think it's real. He think.
Well,
you don't think it's real. You think it comes from somewhere. That's what you just said.
I think it was real at one point in time.
Of course, it'd be awesome if we could find this dude, because it would just make a nice end to the story. But the whole thing is does fucking Bigfoot exist? No.
I don't
Jesus was real at one point, and now he flies and does all kinds of crazy
I think
I can't say that on the radio.
Well, Jesus was real by 5 or 6 other religions before Christianity. He just had a different name.
It's about one-upping each other and trying to be the funniest dude in the room. And all comics do it.
I have heard stories about this guy for years from some of my good comic friends. Like Billy Burr, I've known the guy. We started together. We opened mic together.
This fucking asshole. First time I work with him, he's got a minute of material. He's bitching because he doesn't have a half-hour special yet. It's like, what the fuck are you gonna do for the other 29 minutes?
Billy Burr, Bud Friedman, Rocco, like some guys that I have huge mad respect for, are telling specific stories about this guy. That, like, why would they lie?
That's what we do for a job. We are liars. We make stuff up. Yes, we have a story, but 90% of the time the story is an inspiration for bigger things.
It's 60 seconds of just like scary.
That's 6 10-second bits. I mean, imagine the artistry it takes to get laughs at 6 10-second bits. It's phenomenal.
Even like the fucking Ramones, they write a 1 minute song, but they wrote 20 of them. They gave you an album.
I can see a comic bullshitting another comic in a green room, but established guys, they don't need that.
But why does it matter? So, like, what's going to happen when you find out? Like,
when I see Behind the Curtain of Oz?
He doesn't like it because I keep pulling back. I keep pulling back the curtains over the fucking fraud this guy is.
I just think Morgan is flat out wrong.
you know why Rick's crazy? Because once he gets a hold of something, he won't let go. He's like a little fucking wire-haired terrier. grabs this shit like a rat, and then I'm drug into fucking. Hey, let's just go to LA. Come to Reno.
So they flew down to Hollywood to interview some of their friends in the business who were more than happy to talk about the 1-minute comic. They simply sat them down in front of a camera, pushed record, and let them tell the story of Rob Sampson through their own eyes. They decided to start right at the top and interview the man who started the Improv Comedy Club 50 years ago. The man who launched more careers than anyone in the business, the godfather of comedy himself, Bud Friedman.
Rob came into my eyesight, I guess, because of my wife, Alex. Now, Alex, as some of you know, was not in the business. It wasn't until she married me 30 years ago, but she's got a keen eye. We were in New York years ago, and Catch a Rising Star, this young comic, went on, and she said, you should talk to him. I said, honey, he doesn't have an act. I said, you mean the guy, the creep that hangs outside every night when we come up here? You hated him when he came up and approached me, and now all of a sudden you want me to put him on? And she said, Bud, I think he's got something. Well, I know where my sex is buttered, so I put him on.
Bud's had a very successful career. Why would he want a black mark on his reputation?
Rick keeps using this argument that Bud Friedman, why would he do it? It'd be a black mark on his career. That's bullshit.
Why would he talk about discovering him, working with him, grooming him years ago?
I tried to guide him to say, you got to do something more than this. And he said, no, this is what I want to do, or I don't want to do it.
A black mark, really? From a dude that brought up Andy Kaufman, whose whole premise and whole thing was based on a fucking lie.
Guy comes up to me, the club, at a point in time, he says, how do you do? I am Andy Kaufman.
Bud Friedman let all that happen knowing all of it was going on.
Thank you very much. I knew I'd been had, and I fell up, and it's the same thing, with this guy. He was just, his act, certainly unusual. 1 minute for a headliner.
When we interview these guys, we got to make sure that we ask them all like the same stuff, so we're not playing favorites or influencing the shit that they're saying.
The first time I worked with Rob was just at open mic, and it was a bar in Massachusetts called Scully's.
I met Rob in 1995 at the Comedy Store in San Diego. That's where I started.
I met Rob outside the parking lot of the Improv.
I met him in Florida at a little club called Side Splitters.
Some shitty little bar, the Chuckle Hut, Nebraska, I think.
Backstage at the Jazzborn Theater
in Wickenburg, Arizona. Place called Lowell's.
At Nick's Comedy Stop, I used to waitress there in the 90s. Incidentally, don't waitress.
In Burlington, Vermont. I don't know if you remember those gigs up there, but the place is called The Front.
The first time I saw Bob Sampson was I was visiting Los Angeles, and my parents took me on a trip to a comedy club.
I think 82. I'm not, let's say early 80s. I don't know. I was in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, which people don't know. Mushroom capital of the world.
I ran into Bobby in 2002 at a pizza place in Los Angeles.
The first time I worked with Rob, I was his valet.
Which comic did you talk to that made you suddenly go, oh, we need to fucking figure this out? Who did you talk to?
Joey Gay. I think Joey Gay was probably the one that was the most convincing.
I was in a small club in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, which was one of the last true mafia neighborhoods. And it was a club where guys who were stone cold, real deal murderers hung out.
It's the worst place to do comedy. It's a sports bar. There's a couple softball teams. These guys, they had to unplug the hockey game to start the show.
I saw that guy for the first time in the green room, and I heard, hey, you're working with the 1 minute. I didn't know anything about him. I'd never seen him. I didn't know what he looked like. And I would have picked anybody but him.
I thought he was just a fan at first, and then found out who he was.
No disrespect, he's a genius, but he is a goofy-looking bastard.
He's kind of gross as a human being, but the comedy just completely, saves him.
He was so nice, but then at the end, he left me like his bill. Like I had to pay for his pizza.
Which is something you would expect from some guy with fucking 1 minute of material. I don't understand it.
And his manager said no.
I started with Rob. We were doing open mics together like 15 years ago.
He only had about 4 or 5 seconds at that point.
Back then, he only had 4 seconds.
It wasn't a tight 4 or 5 either, you know. He could do maybe 7 or 8 if he talked to the crowd.
You know, they're not really very good. And over time, he got up to 8 seconds and 15 seconds.
But when I saw him a year later, he had a full minute. I couldn't believe it was the same guy.
And he came out and did a minute, and it changed my life.
I'm not trying to be a dick, the guy was funny, but like, you know, I did a minute.
I mean, you're supposed to do 45 minutes when you headline, so we co-headlined, he did 48 seconds before me, and it was the strongest 48 seconds I've ever seen.
There's got to be more than that, right?
I met him at a Make-A-Wish Foundation. We did a benefit show for a kid who was in a wheelchair. And not only did the crowd give Rob a standing ovation, the kid stood up.
Just the power he had over people was really just like control.
I went up, I ate it. Who else was there? Stephen Wright went down in flames, Dennis Leary, like a lot of us guys from Boston. And then Rob just came in and, you know, just blew the room away, you know. All of a sudden, it was as if like he was instant sobriety, like the whole room just got focused.
We're pulling up to a toll, and I said, let me give you some toll money, you know. And he took $2 from me and he said, your money is no good here. And he threw it out the window before he got to the toll.
But in the entire time I opened for him, like he just kept walking out on checks, and I just kept having to pay them. Like the whole trip ended up costing me like over like $2,000. But you know what? You get to open for Bobby Sampson, so you got to take what you get.
He was so quick. Bang, 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 just unbelievable, relentless, like a Gatling gun of comedy.
He was in Boston, I was coming from Worcester. I got there late. I only saw the last 10 seconds, and it was still totally worth it, you know.
Yeah, he blew my mind. I was like, wow, that's kind of when I knew I wanted to do comedy.
And I know that no matter what I say, no matter how hard I bring it, this guy is going to go up there and undo whatever I did within the first 10 seconds.
I just remember thinking, I may never perform again.
I was feeling really good about my comedy. 15 seconds in, I'm questioning my life choices.
I wanted to quit comedy after I was done watching him. That's how good he was. It was a matter of, well, what's the point now?
And I got up and I ate it for 45 minutes. And it was tough, but it's like, you know, it's my fault for even agreeing to co-headline with a guy that dynamic.
Robbie was the consummate professional. I mean, he'd get mad at you when you were opening for him if you went a second over, because that cut into a second of his time. You do 5 seconds over, he's only going to be able to do 55 seconds, you know. You do 30 seconds over, boom, half his set gone, poof.
The problem is following him, you know. I made that mistake just once, just once.
I watched this minute-long set. I ain't following that shit.
Not only do I not want to go on before him or after him, I don't even want to look at the stage when this dude is done wreaking havoc.
In fact, I stopped doing stand-up for about 5 years, and that was after I followed Rob.
Well, it was hard to follow. It really was.
Nobody could follow him, first of all, but he would kill. He would kill like you wouldn't believe.
Are you shitting me? How do you follow that? I could do an hour after that, and I'd burn in hell. There's no way to follow that minute.
If you called back to something within the last 15 seconds of his act, they would remember that, connect it to Rob, and you look like a genius. That's the only way you could follow him.
I had no problem following the guy, but he just, you know, I don't know, I just wasn't that like, I usually have a good eye of who's gonna make it or not, and that guy, I was just, you know, I didn't see it.
He's got this confidence that everyone wants. And his is like if you melted down confidence to the smallest form and then magnified it by 1,000. He's the black hole of confidence.
I'm not buying this guy's confidence. Like it's the typical Hollywood, he's carrying himself, you know, it's like that fucking chick with the brown hair walking around like she's not a whore, who hangs out with Bruce Jenner and all those people out there in Glendale, right? She's walking around like she's not a whore. It's like we all saw what the fuck you did. We saw how you made it, you know? People, oh, what would you do if that was your girlfriend? I'd have her fucking steam clean.
It's the White Apollo, and he's in a room with people who are literally murderers. 15 seconds in, not only am I a complete believer, but I look to my right and there's a guy who is a murderer, a killer, knows what the inside of a body looks like because he's hacked it up, never laughs. The man is convulsing with laughter. Tears are rolling down his face.
We call him Son of Sam because he would just kill. The guy would kill. That's what he did. He killed.
Crowds buy into it because that's like, I don't know if you've been to a college lately, trying to do a college gig. I mean, you're standing on stage and every 5 seconds they have to update their stats. They like have, that's like the new heckling. They got their face down, you know, in their damn phones. Face lit up like they're in Avatar. That's what it looks like when I'm on stage. I'm standing on stage and they're just like fireflies. So I don't even think they hear half the shit I have to say. So I don't know. Maybe that's the way you got to do it now. You just do like a little 1 minute thing, you know, and then you flash LOL, OMG, and you get off the fucking stage. I don't know.
All these comics have something really good to say and funny to say about this guy. Why not, you know, let's just get to the bottom.
I don't know who to believe. These people are too good at making stories up. I mean, let's be honest.
I can't wrap my brain around Morgan's hypothesis that all of these comedians would completely make up a story out of thin air about a guy that never existed.
People exaggerating and building on it and telling their version of the story. It's kind of like telling whispering something in somebody's ear, and by the time you get to the end of it, it's a totally different story. That's where I think that most of the stuff comes from.
It's said that once you reach a certain level and you develop your own comedic point of view, then any topic is open. Because with a strong enough comedic point of view, you can talk about anything and make it funny. Of course I had a favorite bit of Rob's. 5 words: cockroach in the cooch.
You know, you don't have to work dirty to be funny.
I love Rob's bit on Cappy Bears, and then the whole bit about the, who invented the glockenspiel.
Hey Marge, look what I made. What's it called? I don't know. What does it do? I don't know.
His take on the why did the chicken cross the road? Hey, why did the chicken cross the road? Why? I don't have time, bitch. I'm on to the next thing.
The thing he did about the submarine, and there's a diver who comes up, and so it was a diving bell or something like that.
Ding, ding.
And then he used to strip down to nothing but a G-string and talk about his privates being a pterodactyl.
He did this bit about Genghis Khan, and then he turned it into a Regis Philbin impression.
I love the thing he does on Jell-O.
We had a historian there one night. He said his Genghis Khan was dead on, not just his Regis. You know, we knew the Regis was dead on.
I used to call it the evolution of Jell-O because it's sort of like the evolution of dance. Only instead of using dance, he uses Jell-O in place of dance. So I call it the evolution of Jell-O. It's just.
But what we didn't know was that the Genghis Khan impression was dead on, and that I don't know how he knew, but this historian knew and was blown away.
I haven't eaten Jell-O since because I can't transcended Jell-O as a dessert.
Probably the minute about pears.
The thing about pears, and I cried.
Nazis, very hard to make funny. Cancer, very hard to make funny. Ironically, the third, pears.
Kevin Pollak and Joey Gay were filmed 6 months apart from each other. Kevin in Seattle, Joey in Reno, and they both came up with a bit that Rob had about pears.
These dudes are comedians. It's a small world.
No way. It came from somewhere. They saw a guy doing 1 minute about pears. That's exactly where that came from.
It's a time thing. People are fascinated that this guy is only on stage for a minute. You know, who gives a fuck?
They got a fish tank in the back of the stage. He comes up. They said, I did not see this, but he looks at the tank and goes, "Fish are weird, huh?"
My favorite bit he does isn't even a bit, it's just a look. He just does this.
So he didn't have a closing bit at that time. He just went like, kapow, something.
It's deafening laughter when he does that, because it's basically telling the crowd, I'm better than you, I know it, fuck you, but I still hurt inside.
They had a lot of people that saw that video with Rogan and Mencia going at it, and that the example he used is that wall joke. Bob Sampson actually wrote that and gave it to me. He said it was a shitty joke. I thought it was awesome, and so did everybody else.
Here's his new thing. I don't know if you guys heard this. He wants to build a new wall all down the California-Mexico border, like a 12-foot high brick wall. It's like 3 feet deep. so no Mexicans get in. But I'm like, dude, Arnold, who do you think's gonna build that wall?
And Mencia started doing it. That's my joke, and I was like, no, it's not. It's fucking Bob Sampson's joke. And he sold it to me, or gave it to me, so I was like, now it's my, he said I could do it. It's my joke.
You go, hey, how's everybody doing? You clear your throat, you pause for a second, you're down to 52 seconds. Anybody can get through that.
Hey, how's everybody doing? I mean, that eats up like literally half of his friggin' act. You know? And forget if he brings it down for the troops. I mean, the guy, he only has to do like literally 28 seconds at that point. How about a moment of silence for all the troops that passed in the last fucking, you know, whatever. Just every hack. Ladies, back me up.
Billy Burr has enough on his plate that he doesn't need to get rattled. He fucking hates Rob Sampson. Like, Billy Burr was going off on what a douche.
But isn't that what Bill Burr does always?
You know what sucks about this thing? I'm gonna come off bitter. I'm just fucking saying I'm just saying how it is.
He's an intense motherfucker. I mean, and that's why we love him.
I can't remember the question. I'm so hostile with this guy. What was the question?
Every now and then you'll get a heckle. And it's in your training to know how to deal with a heckler. And if you can't, then you won't succeed, you won't have a career.
You know, before Rob Sampson, comedy clubs, they didn't need bouncers. You know, it was like, you know, he got so big so quickly, he started bringing in these crowds, and they were like...
And they were necessary, quite necessary.
It became, you know, the standard.
Most of the people, if not 99%, know why they're there as an audience, and that is to listen. And some idiots actually think they're helping you.
If Rob Sampson was in town, you know you had to have, you know, your shit stomping boots on. You know, it was something was going to go down. There was going to be some unruly fan who did not like something he said, and they accused him of stealing his girl, and then he would actually steal his girl. I mean, the whole fucking thing would come full circle, and you'd have to throw a motherfucker out.
And they come up to you after the show and say, basically, you're welcome. Hey, I'm the guy that yelled the shit out and helped you. You're welcome. And you just want to set their head on fire because they don't get it.
In 1 minute, he could ignite a crowd unlike anybody I'd ever seen.
He's not generally a violent guy.
Rob comes in, kicks the fucking guy clean in the goddamn face.
Square in the face.
Kicks him in the fucking face. The cops come, the ambulance come.
I was there when the ambulance came.
And there were sirens. So things got pretty wild.
Devastation. Waitresses are dropping their trays. People are falling over. 911. I mean, it's a freak show.
Somehow his clothes came off.
He came out without his shirt on. He emerged in a cluster of violence.
I put my fist in his ribs, and I start fucking pounding him on the ground. I could feel his fucking ribs cracking on my fist.
I heard it.
He starts pounding his fuck.
It's bullshit. Every bit of it. Seriously, it's all bullshit.
Why?
Because it's not real. Have you ever heard of it? Besides these two dudes?
They might be exaggerating again, but we also have Tom Cotter and Dov Davidoff and John Caparulo also telling a similar story about an ambulance coming and like a brawl breaking out. So they're stretching the truth here, but I mean, you don't think that these guys saw some shit go down somewhere?
No, not at all.
It's like the Bruce Lee of dealing with hecklers. It's like the 1-inch punch.
It's China meets Arkansas. You know, it's almost like you don't know if he's going to do a Chinese move or if he's going to drive a tractor into your front porch.
The craziest part about it, that night, Bobby did the best set I've ever seen him fucking do in my entire life. Like, he almost killed someone, not more than 10 minutes before going up, killed it.
And they're all telling a very, very similar story about an incident that had to have happened somewhere down the road.
All right, well, I'd say Google it.
I did.
and you found out that you're fucking wrong like you always are.
Okay, but Google, you can't believe everything on the internet.
You know, Robbie's technique with hecklers was brevity is the soul of wit. Just bing, bang, boom, nail them.
You know, when you get a heckler, you think 3 lines ahead, like, what am I going to say? But he's literally in the pocket, you know what I mean?
He had to get in and get out quickly. It was just a quick, I fucked your mother, boom, right back into it.
Everybody's hanging on his every word. They are enthralled, and a guy heckles. Bobby Sampson just simply says response in parking lot.
How I do it is I kind of try to talk to the guy and try to, you know, Bobby just picked up the chair and whipped it at the guy, and it hit the guy in the head.
Fucking murders for the remainder of the 40 or 35 seconds that he has.
And then Bobby goes, how about this? Goes out to the audience and fucks the guy's girlfriend, like in front of everybody.
Everybody hung out in the parking lot in their cars waiting for him to come out. It took him about 15 minutes.
And everyone is cheering and going crazy.
It was so fucking brilliant. Even the heckler was applauding when he was done.
That's the thing about Rob, is that he lives in the moment.
So it's just these two dudes going, we did this bouncer thing, and then we got other guys saying, I jerked off on his face. It all sounds ridiculous.
I saw him for the third time. He did the improv. And this guy yelled out, hey, your face sucks.
The thing is when you're only doing 1 minute, you don't want it to get interrupted by a heckler, I guess. So he just, you know, he has a zero tolerance policy. And
he doesn't have the seconds to waste here on you and your mouth, sir.
And it wasn't like, hey, I don't go down to your job. It was pinpoint laser accuracy.
He laid into this guy so hard that the guy had an 8-ball of cocaine in his pocket, and he fucking sorted the whole thing and tried to fight him.
It was like Jedi stuff because he was able to find that, and I don't know how he can size people. A lot of comedians are very good at this, sizing people up, finding their weakness.
I'm gonna fight this guy, and then I'm gonna suck his dick. I heard him say that, and I was like, holy fuck.
This man hanged himself.
I went to the bathroom later on that night, and the guy tried to commit suicide. He was hanging off the toilet and a noose.
I don't know for sure that this has never happened, but this is the only time that a heckler has committed suicide because of the response from the comedian.
And I actually pulled the guy off the noose, and I was like, breathe, like I resuscitated him.
I wonder how many of those stories were actually true, but they just used the name Rob Sampson.
Yeah, you dream of that, saying something to the heckler that causes them to kill themselves, but Sampson actually did it.
I'm like, are you okay? And he goes, yeah. He goes, did you see what that guy said to me? And I said, yeah, I fucking did.
He completely, I guess, robbed him of all hope.
And he goes, do you blame me for the choice I just made? And I said, no, I don't.
They told a good story. I'll give them that. It's pretty funny shit. You know? You found that tape and that turned out to be bogus. But what does that tell you? There was a tape that said Rob Sampson 1 minute comic. Do you think just another comedian?
Going through my cassettes, and I found this one here. And I know you're a comedian. And like it says 1 minute comics.
Obviously, again, you're right. That tape proved, you know,
it's handwritten. It could be. It's just a dude. There's something on it. It's weird. We're gonna listen to this and see what you think it is.
I hear like audience. I can't make anything out.
And there just happened to be a minute of bullshit that nobody could understand and some applause. That doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean,
you'd have to at least hear a voice and a joke and maybe a punchline. I mean,
someone
is comedy, right?
Someone knew that Rob Sampson story when they made that tape, though.
The more people they talked to, the crazier the accounts got. That said, for every comic who had a Rob Sampson story, there was another waiting in the wings to debunk the whole tale.
We've got some of the biggest comics in the industry saying shit. Some of it's contradictory, too.
I think he's either so fucking good that everybody leaves him alone, or it's bullshit. I think the whole thing is bullshit.
A lot of people say that he's not real. You know, he never existed.
Well, there's two sides to that. There's some people who are in denial about it. They don't want to know the possibility of a conspiracy. They just want the facts and accept it as it is. It's fear-based.
Because you haven't heard of them doesn't mean that they're not there.
I've heard of him. I've never worked with him because he doesn't exist.
Why would I call the booker and tell him I can't follow a comic that doesn't exist?
Lying is one way of putting it.
How would one benefit for making up such a story? I don't know.
This is shit that guys make up to get laid. Period.
Comedians are liars. Their whole job is predicated on telling bullshit.
And then there's the other people that are intrigued about conspiracies. They want to know the possibility of the possibility.
Well, because it's possible.
That's impossible.
Nothing is impossible.
Don't inject logic into this thing.
I've seen a lot of comics who only had one funny minute, but I've never seen anybody go out with just 1 minute.
And you know how every open micer has that 1 minute of material that's killer? You know, that's one joke or 1 minute. I bet that was it, and he decided to spin that into the 1 minute comic, and he created a legend himself.
I used to run a Moggy's. It was a hot comedy club on Sunset and Gower in Los Angeles.
You know, I do self-promotion shows, which are bringer shows, and what that means is a lot of comics required to bring people to perform.
It was a bringer show. That's the only way I could fill up the room.
I had the hottest show going on about a year after I moved out here, and Rob was the guy that called me.
Rob Sampson called me, and I said, can you bring 8 to 10 people? And he said, sure, it's not a problem.
So are both of them lying? Because if one of them's telling the truth and the other one's lying, that means Rob Sampson called either TK or Diana or showed up or didn't show up.
I'd heard of Rob, but I didn't really know Rob. I heard people talk about him, but I was like, all right, yeah, but you got to bring people. He's like, oh, yeah, I can bring people.
Are you sure? I'm like, you know, because you can't be on the show unless, I mean, I can't give you a good spot.
He's like, no, I can definitely do it. And then nobody showed up.
1,600 people showed up just based on the rumor that he was going to be there.
You've got to be able to bring people because I've got to supply an audience.
He never even showed up.
She said he never showed up. So
right.
She doesn't know what he looked like, and nobody else can tell us very much what he looks like.
You know, I booked him like twice in a row, and he didn't bring anybody.
So would you book him again?
Fuck yeah.
And they don't even know each other, and they're both telling the same story, but...
They're not telling the same story, is what I'm saying.
It's similar.
Yeah. Well, it's similar in the fact that it's completely opposite. You got one thing, and you got another, and they're exactly opposite. The only thing that's similar is...
Bringers.
That they're doing bringer shows. That's it.
Well, a lot of people believe that Rob Sampson was invented by some comics to keep certain comics out of certain clubs.
Like a chick could have 700 minutes of material, but she doesn't get booked. But this guy with 1 minute, you know, I can't pay my rent, but this guy.
I'd book him if it was a solid minute, you know, and that as a headliner, yeah.
What I do know is that most club owners would rather book an imaginary man than an actual woman. This I know.
All I can tell you is, from my perspective, if it sells tickets, I'm going to book it.
Some people think he's a myth, some people think he's a wives' tale.
Yeah, it's like one of those urban legends.
I love the urban legends, but come on. Do you really think somebody went to an emergency room with a gerbil up his ass?
I'd have to think hard.
I think that was Richard Gere who came in with the gerbil in his ass.
You're absolutely right.
Why do people want to believe in Bigfoot? Why do people want to believe in the Loch Ness Monster?
Right, there's pictures of Bigfoot. How is there not pictures of Rob Sampson? You could put anyone in there. Really, anyone could be Rob Sampson and no one's even bothered to do that.
It's romantic to believe that there's some mythical creature out there that somehow defies proof.
Well, people believe anything. People believe the Bible.
People are desperate to believe that Elvis is still alive, that the Kardashians are somehow relevant, that free healthcare is free, that windmills will make a difference. Come on.
Certain myths are created to scare other people out of that culture.
If I was going to market something like that, I would want to put a video on YouTube. Not the whole minute. 24, 25 seconds. You know, you don't want to give it all away.
I would believe it if there was a parody video even. There's nothing.
Do you have any video of him?
There's never been.
There's never been video. There's never been audio.
There is no video evidence of him, and I'll tell you why, because there are cameramen that would just get their camera set up, the tripod, everything. By the time they get it all set up, boom, thank you, good night, he's gone.
Have you yourself seen him? No, you've not seen him? Yeah, he's not real.
If you're not from here, he is real. Because I will lie to you.
There's either that or they're willingly lying. There's that whole catfish thing that's going on that people think is great to pull one over on somebody. I mean, the stories are pretty spectacular.
It's genius if you think about it.
basically when I'm on the road, I like to further the story of Rob Sampson because I like to lower the standards in the entertainment industry.
I know it would be hard to believe that that many people could carry on the lie, but what about Santa? How many people had to lie to pull that off?
I mean, that's like kids when they say they've seen Santa Claus. You're all of a sudden way cooler than the kids who haven't seen Santa Claus. That's how people feel with this 1 minute comic. If you've met Rob Sampson, everyone wants to hear what you have to say.
Okay, there are mythical figures throughout history. Santa Claus, Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny, Kaiser Soze, Jesus, Rob Sampson. Rob is the only real one out of all of those.
This can't be true. And if it is true, then it's fucking amazing.
People don't know whether he really truly exists or not. But here I am, I'm telling you firsthand that I've worked with the guy and I've spent hours in a vehicle with him.
I mean, Al Ducharme, I love him, but he has an overactive imagination.
People want to think that he's a part of a conspiracy. Sure, why not? It's fascinating.
I've heard rumors, I've never seen him, but I heard it was Mickey Rooney.
Yeah, I thought Mickey Rooney was the 1 minute comic.
Well, maybe he did a little character on vaudeville in 1942. That was the 1 minute act, and the legend snowballed from there.
Yeah, you know, he could have just been working out a bit for a movie, or who knows.
1 minute comic? That might have been a character I played.
Like, we haven't traced it to any time period. A lot of different types of people are talking about it. There are all these different ages. To me, that makes no sense. Unless it's either a fake character or this dude's really, really old.
That Mickey Rooney story was passed down from generation to generation. Yeah, I bet a bunch of other comics were pretending to be like Rob Sampson, but the real legend belongs to Mickey.
What are you intimating?
Yeah, if it was a character that Mickey Rooney created 90 years ago, that would make sense. That's something that happened and it got spun into a legend. I believe it.
I think it makes sense. It could have been him.
Well, I wasn't a stand-up comic, but I've had funny lines to say.
I did work with Rob Sampson, and you know, the truth is I knew it was Mickey Rooney. And I withheld that information out of respect for him.
But if that's the case, every comic you're talking to is still lying because no one worked with him last week.
So you worked with Mickey Rooney back in the 40s, 50s?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, I mean, not at all, but you know, it just.
I think it proves my point. This is a bunch of people making up a whole bunch of stories. So it would make sense because there's young people clear up to old people. It makes sense for somebody from way back who has had a long career and just continues to fuck with people.
Maybe the guys are bullshitting each other, but they're all coming up with a kernel of truth. One of the rumors that Morgan and I heard was that this Rob Sampson created the Aristocrats joke. And then they left him out of the movie.
One of the main reasons I think it's fake is because of the fact that you got your Aristocrats joke, you tell somebody one thing, and you say, here's the beginning, here's the end, fill it in. That's what these comics do. Dude, half the people I've talked to that did the Aristocrats joke and went on camera to do the Aristocrats joke have all said, I've never heard the joke.
Look at the Aristocrats joke. It has a structure to it. It has a base. There's a setup and then a punchline that every comic tries to top each other with. I don't see that in a Rob Sampson story. Kevin Pollak didn't know what Joey Gay said, and he didn't know what Gary Gulman said. He didn't know what Allie Green said. It's not like they're trying to top each other. You know what I mean? Like, at least with the Aristocrats, you know the joke.
Richard Lewis said that he didn't know, had never heard the joke. Dudes that were in it say they've never heard the joke before. Here's the premise, here's the end, go for it. So, I'm not saying you're totally wrong. I'm saying I don't know what I think, because we need to figure it out. That's the whole point, I guess.
Legendary is, I guess, another way of saying a comic's comic. The guys that all the other comics talk about.
Wait. He's called a comic's comic by who? Well, basically, comedy will always be, there'll be before Rob and after Rob.
The first way that I would say the 1 minute comic shaped what we do, step one was no one would ever think to do 1 minute.
I always admire, and this is what goes back to what makes a legend, a comedian following his vision.
Why does the minute work? It shouldn't.
Once you see it done in 1 minute, that's off the table.
I've just never seen anybody change a room in 15 seconds and make 200 people a believer.
I was amazed. I was amazed.
Rob just has the touch.
Something comes out of him that makes us stop and watch because there's just no fear whatsoever in his soul. And you see that as an audience member and you see it as a comic.
Everybody's fucking flipping out about this guy. Oh, he's on his 20th special. It's 20 minutes of material. And they roll credits for fucking 45 minutes.
A lot of people do hate on him, but where's your 1 minute headline set?
I used to love to come in because it was only a minute. I can't stand to watch some of these other guys sometimes, but for a minute I can handle it no matter how bad or how good it is. And I was almost changing all the time.
It's never the same minute. Ever. Ever.
He only does the 1 minute one time.
Over the span of his entire career, it's never been the same minute. And that's the remarkable thing.
What is comedy without Bobby Sampson?
I don't know. It's an absolute phenomenon.
I'd say it's important to comedy because it's so unique. You know, so many people do the same thing, the same rhythms, and he's like, you know, fuck that. I'll bring you 60 seconds of heat and then I'm out.
He doesn't have to deal with like a check spot. You know what I mean? Like as a headliner, it's like right around like, you know, about 40, 41 minutes into your act, they drop the checks. Just carpet bomb the room. You completely lose them. You're standing there like a homeless guy in a bus station trying to get everybody's attention again. Then you got to build them back up again. When does that happen in his act? Second 41?
His impact on comedy has been fast.
It's like that. He tries to hone his words so that there's so few that they mean so much.
Less is more.
I don't mind when somebody comes up with a catchphrase or they got a fucking puppet. And they go, well, next thing you know, they're playing with a Vancouver Canucks play. That doesn't bother me. Okay? At least they're doing an hour. Alright? And if you want to go up there and dress like a bag lady and create a character, I don't give a shit. Just do your goddamn time.
So it's time, look, make us laugh so we can get out of here, alright? You know, the car's running.
You talk about the triple crown of comedy. You're talking about George Carlin, Rob Sampson, Tom Cotter. The fact that these two just couldn't hold it up to Rob Sampson. Rob Sampson is number one, always has been.
And I got this running ramp. It's gonna have a whole new, like, sea of 1 minute hacks, like salmon, just coming up the fucking Comedy River. Looking at me, oh, what are you doing an hour for? Why don't you just cut all the fat?
I mean, there's cutting out the fat, and then there's 1 minute.
I'm already starting to see it. Seeing some of my friends, they're doing like 38, 36 minutes, thinking I'm not noticed, just giving in to the fucking trend, like Rod Stewart, when he decided to become a douche and he started doing disco. Remember that? Then they found all the semen in his stomach. Right? I mean, how many times does this have to play out?
How do I get to that? How do I get to that place?
I was in the hospital one time, and he came to visit me, which I didn't expect. I mean, he didn't come in the room, he just, walked by and said hi.
You think he's gonna zig, and he doesn't even zag. He does something that there's not even a word. There's not even a word for it. He frippers, or you'd have to create a word for what he does, because zag is like that's what you would think he would do.
He was somebody that knew how to get the most out of every minute of every day, and I think we all learned from him. Now when I visit someone in the hospital, I don't go in the room. I just walk by.
I was nervous, I was bombing, and all of a sudden Rob showed up. He walked up on stage.
I had the show of my life, and I got a standing ovation, and Bobby Sampson was there.
He came up to me and he put his back of his hand on my face like this, and he rubbed down on my face, and he just walked off.
200 people are standing up trying to pay me as much respect as they can for my craft, and I search out Bobby Sampson in the room.
And I literally started destroying after that, and I don't know what he did.
And he did this thing that like Jesus does in statues, and just looked me in the eye.
It was like some sort of Jedi, you know what I mean? Like some sort of like Lord of the Rings, Saruman wizard trick with the hand. But he really, he's a magical person.
And when I left that night, I spoke to my mom. I didn't mention the standing ovation. I said, Mom, Bobby Sampson looked me in the eyes and made a small hand gesture, and she looked me right in the face and said, bullshit.
I guess I feel like it's like what it must have felt like when, you know, someone would be watching a early Steve Martin or George Carlin or Buddy Hackett.
It's about 60 seconds of just laughter, you know, and he's nothing without it. You know, he needs the crowd as much as the crowd needs him.
His comedy is beyond me. His effect on comedy is beyond me. I've been doing this for 13 years. I've dedicated my life to this art form. I can't figure this fucking genius bastard out or what he'll do to this country.
You can't emulate the king. You can't emulate the guy who in a minute would just blow up a room. You can't do it. It's never going to be done.
Fuck this guy and his 1 minute of material. You know what I mean?
He was one of the guys that influenced me to do stand-up.
He's one of a kind. He really is.
His dick it's bigger than any black guy's, and it's not black.
That's memorable. That's memorable.
While the majority of the people interviewed remained steadfast in their accounts of Rob Sampson, there still remains a vocal minority of insiders who deny his existence in the first place. Without any actual video or photographic evidence, it would appear the naysayers have enough weight to support their claims. Yet, for the believers, his legacy lives on, stronger than ever.
I think most people think it's bullshit, but there are people that still believe, based on what they've seen.
All right, look, I will give you this. We have not been able to prove that there's a Rob Sampson or that Rob Sampson ever existed. But conversely, it's like trying to prove God. You can't disprove it either.
You're there with it, huh? Or you just want it over?
I don't know. Look, I mean, first of all, I will never admit that you're right. I will never admit.
You sound like a Patriots fan.
Words to describe Rob Sampson.
Amazing.
Audacious.
Awkward.
Brilliant.
Caring.
Confident. Charlatan.
Dedicated.
Devastating.
Devastating.
Epic.
Fictional.
Groundbreaking. Illustrious.
Insane.
Irrepressible.
Legendary. Magnanimous.
Neurotic. Outrageous.
Original.
Petulant.
Ridiculous.
Voracious.
Sneaky hater.
I don't think there's a guy today named Rob Sampson who's out headlining around the country. But I do honestly believe that at some point in time, there was a guy named Rob Sampson, and he was a...
The Aristocrats and the 1 minute comic don't exist. It's all fake. It's all made up. Both of them.
And there was no second gunman, and Building 7 really did collapse because of heat
Aristocrats
implosion.
joke is real.
But look, I will give you this. If there was a guy going around doing the 1 minute act, there'd be a headshot in a comedy club somewhere. There would be an old videotape. Maybe it's just like a rite of passage. Like everyone has to have their Rob Sampson story.
I don't know, dude. I'm willing to cash it in. I'll even say, hey, I don't want to spend any more money or go anywhere else on this. To the point where, like, I'll even say you're right.
All right, end of movie.
Fuck off.
We're done. End of story. I'm right. Rob Sampson, he lives.
The South Park writers said it best in their epic trilogy, Imagination Land, better known as Kyle Sucks Cartman's Balls. At the end of the show, Kyle Broflovsky makes a brilliant point, explaining how imaginary characters can be as real as actual people. Think about it, he says. Haven't Luke Skywalker and Santa Claus affected your lives more than most real people in the room? I mean, whether Jesus is real or not, he's had a bigger impact on the world than any of us have. And the same could be said of Bugs Bunny, Superman, and Harry Potter. They've changed my life and the way I act on this earth. They might be imaginary, but they're all going to be around long after we're dead. So, in a way, doesn't that make them kind of real? I mean, more realer than any of us?
See what's happening here is really great. The myth is alive.
When in doubt, don't worry.
started this thing 3 years ago, and half the people in our movie weren't even famous when we first started it. And now they're famous, and we're still sticking around in Seattle drinking fucking $4 cups of coffee. And I'm trying to cling to this myth, you know, that never existed in the first place. Who wins? I think they do. So let's just, yeah, you're right, man. Let's just get on with our lives.
Do you guys have a name for the documentary?
No, I don't know. Just, you know.
Morgan's gonna call it.
Rick and Morgan interview a bunch of their famous friends so they can try to get famous too.
Folks, you're in for a big treat. He hasn't done comedy, I don't even think, in over 5 years. Please welcome Rob Sampson. Rob Sampson.